All right. Here we go. The long awaited NFC predictions. We are fully underway with our prediction episodes. Love to do this every year. Among my favorite episodes
Oh
each
yeah.
season is this one. So we're going to give you our full record predictions, our division standing predictions, playoff seedings, everything for the NFC. And then we'll give you AFC next week. But before we get into any of that, we got to discuss the news that broke. I don't know if it was Friday, maybe it was Thursday night. There is going to be a biopic or a biopic, however you pronounce it,
Biopic
of the late great John Madden.
Oh, yeah.
And tabbed to
Nick
play
Cage.
John Madden
That's right.
is none other than Nicolas Cage. What are we doing? What is this? It's almost perfect, but also just doesn't. I can't picture it.
Well, who is the director of it is a really famous director, like a really good director. I think it's Sam Raimi, or I think he did Black Swan. Or you have to look that up for me right now. But it's
I don't think it's the Sam Raimi.
It's a good director. As soon as you say his name,
yeah.
I'll recognize it. What I'm trying to figure out is this just John Madden, like when he was a broadcaster with Pat Summerall? Because what's so fascinating about these real life biopics, yeah, I mean, obviously Nick Cage's John Madden is going to be wild, but also like who are you going to fill in all of these other roles, right? Like there's going to be a bunch of other real people in this. And it's like, who do they get to play those real people is always what I'm fascinated about. Like that new SNL movie coming out about the original SNL cast, that whole like who you have playing all the different roles. It's always so much fun to see how well they do with, is it a good actor who can play the role, but also looks like the person, because that's so much of it. Did you get who the director is?
Yeah, it was David O. Russell. He's
David O. Russell,
Silver Linings Playbook, American Hustle, The Fighter.
Okay. Yes. Good director, good movies, good director.
Yeah. So it'd be interesting to see. I wonder, Nicolas Cage is going to have to be putting back some, Italian beefs and whatnot for the next, 6 months to get ready for this bad boy. But
it's weird. Yeah. I wonder who else was even considered. Like that.
I know. I mean, you would think Frank Caliendo had to have been maybe. I mean, get that he's a much more of a gimmicky deal, so that would have been hard to swing for like a movie. But he does do a hell of an impression.
Well, I don't know. I mean, like Will Sasso. He's a good act. He's a good actor. He's been in stuff.
You just hey, you know what? Vince Vaughn would have been interesting. I mean, he would have had to put on a lot of.
It had to
I bet he could have nailed that role.
Or like Brendan Fraser. Brendan Fraser just had a giant comeback.
There you go.
You know what I mean? He's still thicker. He's still bigger guy. You could add some weight to him. Just weird. Just wild. It's going to be good.
Yeah, it was an interesting choice. I mean, that's certainly going to get people to tune in for sure. Nick Cage has been doing a lot of movies lately.
Kind of a renaissance, a weird renaissance to his career for sure.
Very interesting. All right. Well, not going to push or kick the can too far down the road.
His casting will probably be better than my predictions coming up. So let's just go with that.
Let's see. All right, here we go. Let's kick ourselves into gear. Here we go. 2024 NFC prediction. All right. Well, Mark, I know that you're, back in 1982 here with the way that you do your predictions on pen and paper. Did you do it again this year, or did you
no, I used
come
your
to
link.
The internet?
I used your link. It's way easier, that link that you sent, to like when you get to the end and you realize, wait a minute, why does that team only have one win? I've got to go back and find them a couple wins to change that pretty easily.
I tried a new method this time around too, where you could just click on the team's logo and then just pick their schedule for them instead. I actually think I might like that better. I tried that this time around because I used to just do it week by week and pick all the matchups.
And you just
but now you can just click on the team logo and it gives you their full schedule. You just pick the matchups there.
Does it then automatically fill in the other people's?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right.
So when you fill out the Lions, when you get to the Bears, you've already got a couple matchups that the Bears have already in, so
like
you have less to
lost or
fill
won.
in,
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's an interesting way. So
Oh,
maybe
that's
do that
clever.
for the AFC if you hadn't already.
That's
Um,
clever because it really then allows you to look at like, hey, I've already committed this before. You know what I
right,
mean?
right.
And do I like this now or do I not like it now? It's an interesting way. I will say for
Yeah.
me, the NFC, I feel like the NFC is easier than the AFC this year, just purely based on the fact that um, the AFC is so top heavy quarterback dominated that the NFC it's a little bit of like, okay, yeah, I can see that person not having a good year and only winning 7 games. And it's just, easier to justify. It's harder to justify some of these really good quarterbacks in the AFC only winning
True.
7 games. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
for that, I will say I'm glad we're starting with the NFC. I do already have my AFC kind of filled out because I did it the whole schedule. So I have a look at
That's
it.
right.
But
Yeah.
we also definitely have room for changes. We have 2 weeks to make any little amendments we need to based on a devastating injury or anything like that. But as of right now, I do feel pretty confident with my division winners and the teams I'm gonna have making the playoffs and their records. I feel pretty good about it.
Yeah, I feel good about it as well. And I know that we talked about there's always a shifting of like 3 to 4-ish teams every
Yeah.
year in the playoff landscape that make the playoffs that weren't there before. I have fulfilled that marker with the first go around with the records. I was hoping I would achieve that, and I was able to. So that made me feel even better about the way that I have these things filled out, and even by divisional breakdown. To me, this makes a lot of sense. I think it does reflect how I
Yeah.
feel about these teams. And just before we launch into it, we've discussed this in the past. What I tend to do when I do these predictions, it's never a perfect science. But what I
Yeah.
like to do is give each team a win over a team that they have no business beating,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
losing to a team that they should have absolutely won.
Yes.
Um, I feel like maybe that helps balance out the scales league wide across everything. I'm gonna have the Chiefs losing to some random team that
Yes.
maybe they shouldn't, um, and I'm gonna have the Vikings or the Chiefs, well, I guess the Chiefs
You're a bad
would really
example
beat
because they're
any
a
team,
favorite. Yeah.
so
Yeah.
that's a bad. But I'll have the Panthers beating,
Yeah.
the Lions or something like that.
Because
Just
even if
to
you
just
didn't
to
get
balance
that
it out.
exact upset right, an upset
There's going
will
to be
happen.
an upset.
Yes,
Right,
I
right.
agree. I think it's a smart way to go about it. I will say
Yeah.
I'm with you again. There are 12 teams that make the playoffs each year, right? There are 6 seeds in each, or is a up to 7 seeds, 14
7. There's
teams.
7 in each,
Yeah,
yeah, so
14 teams make the playoffs every year in the NFL, and I have 4 overall between the AFC and NFC. I have 4 new teams in the playoffs that weren't there last year into this year, so that fits into that realm of anywhere usually between 3 and 5 on average, different teams in the playoffs. But I got to be honest, in the NFC, not as much change for me. So it's just in a little preview of a sense. So we can get into it here now.
fair enough.
Are we starting with the East? I think we said.
The NFC East. We are starting with the NFC East. I'll let you, kick things off here with us for us, going through your order there. I guess let's always start with the bottom of the division, and we can
Yeah,
work
work
our
our
way
way
up.
up. I like that. I have the Giants at the bottom of the NFC East. They came out to 4-13 for me. I think what my feeling is with the Giants is they do have a schedule early on that is not exactly the easiest in the world. But for me, after watching Daniel Jones, especially for that first preseason game, I think it's gonna be a long season. And the problem is there's no one in the pipeline for New York to where if Daniel Jones gets injured or Daniel Jones, you feel like you have to pull him because he's just not playing well. They don't have like someone to go to who you're excited about, right? There's no third round rookie. There's no second young guy in a second team like a Mac Jones in a Jacksonville. He really should be in New York, right? Because it feels like you're
Yeah.
gonna someone else. I just think New York overall, offensive line, I have huge question marks on. Quarterback, I have huge question marks on. I have a feeling that Brian Dable will be coaching for a different team next year and will be in a much better spot. And I have a feeling that the Giants will be quite possibly drafting with the number 1 overall pick come next year. I go then to Washington at 5-12. I think Washington's going to be a team that will lose a lot of close games. I think they're going to put up a really fight. They're going to be in a lot of games. I could see them peaking at maybe 7 wins. I think their floor is really 5 wins. I have them hovering around the floor, mainly because I think there'll be a ton of energy to start Washington's season because you have a new owner, you have a new coach, you have a new general manager. I mean, it's all brand new, right? And so I think there's that excitement, that freshness, that newness is going to be great. But then also, how does that translate to the longevity? I think it's exciting that the breaking news today of Jane Daniels getting named a starter. I think that's smart. Throw the kid out there. He seems ready to go. And again, it wouldn't shock me if Washington is, 2-2 or 2-1 or 3-1, and then they hit a really rough stretch, right? All it takes is Terry McLaurin pulling a hamstring, and they have no weapons for Jane Daniels. You know what I mean? The depth of weapons is just gone. And so I think they just teeter too much on the edge of chaos with not enough weapons, an offensive line I don't 100% trust, and a defense that, even though they have a defensive coach, there's no stars on that defense anymore. So I have them at 5-12. Cowboys in second in this division, and I have them at a lowly 7-10, Dan. I think this is the year. There's too much pressure. There's way too much noise. As of right now, as I'm picking these games, CeeDee Lamb is still not in camp. Micah Parsons is upset. And you have Dak Prescott, who's saying the right things, but is frustrated as all get out that he doesn't have a new contract. When you pair all of that together with they have a really bad running back group, an offensive line that is younger but talented, and a defense that Micah Parsons, Gilmore, Diggs, yes, there's some stars on it, but again, they lost Dan Quinn. I think that's a huge loss for that defense overall. It's just the mentality, and you have a coach that is
just the bones, the meat of the defense isn't really there. I mean, one player goes down, and we're all of a sudden saying this is probably a mid-level to below average
defense. I agree with that. And they don't have a running game. And Dak's always been best with a running game. We know that. That's not news to anyone. And so I want to quickly point out here, I made a note with the Cowboys. Let me find them and bring up their schedule here really quick. Because I made a note because you're going to be like, oh, you're just a hater, 7-10. They have a stretch in the season that is a really tough stretch where you have Lions, Niners, Falcons, Eagles, Texans. I like the quarterback for the other team in all of those games, except for maybe Kirk Cousins. You know what I mean?
I have them going 1-4 during that stretch.
Yeah, and it's a really tough stretch. And they are at the Niners. In that stretch, they're also at Atlanta, which is a tough place to play. And then the home games with the Lions, the Lions are going to take that as a huge revenge game. They should have won that game. They were screwed of that game. And then it doesn't get much easier. Yes, you have Commanders and you have Giants, but then you have a stretch late in the year where you have to play the Buccaneers, who won a playoff game last year, the Eagles late in the year, a divisional opponent, and the Bengals late in the year on a primetime game. It's a tough stretch in the middle of the season for Dallas. And again, Dallas, if CeeDee Lamb is not playing football for the Dallas Cowboys, or he misses any time, they have truly no one. They don't have weapons. Yes, Dalton Schultz is a nice tight end. He's a very nice tight end.
Well, no, he's in Houston now.
Jake Ferguson. Yes, Ferguson is
good. Yeah.
He's a nice tight end, but he's not. He's not Schultz, right? He's not he's not a Travis Kelce who can carry an offense. So I have the Cowboys at 7-10. A lot of that is due to the pressure that Mike McCarthy's facing. And I do have the Eagles winning the division at 10-7. 10 wins, I feel like, is the ceiling for this Eagles team. And I have them at the ceiling of 10 wins. I like that they upgraded their coordinators. But I don't love the report from ESPN just last week that Sirianni and Hurts couldn't even be in the same room together at the end of the season last year. I don't like that. And I don't like the fact that they truly didn't replace Kelce and the defensive tackle Fletcher Cox. mean, two gigantic presences in that building, not just only talented players, but just people who hold presence in that building. To where I think their ceiling is 10 wins. I have them hitting their ceiling because I truly think they just have so many more weapons and better players than the rest of their division that they will win in division pretty handily. I can see them going 5-1 in division pretty easily. Nick Sirianni, like Mike McCarthy, is on the hot seat, but I think this is Nick Sirianni of 2 years ago where he has great coordinators around him versus Nick Sirianni of last year where it was more like, okay, it's his show. And I think he's capable of getting back to 10 wins. I don't think the ceiling is Super Bowl for the Eagles, but I do think the ceiling is 10 wins and winning the division, mainly also too because the division's just in chaos. Like, it's just not a division that I believe in. If the Eagles were in, the AFC South, or if they were in the AFC West, I don't think they win the division, by any means necessary. So they get a bump by the fact that the rest of their division, I think, is just in a little bit of chaos.
Beautiful. No, I like that summation. You want to give us a quick glimpse now that you've gone through all four, a real quick rundown of the record and seeding for there, and then I'll go ahead and give mine.
Yeah, so I have the Eagles winning the division at 10-7. I have the Cowboys at 7-10, missing the playoffs. Washington at 5-12, missing the playoffs. Giants at 4-13. I could see all of these, the Cowboys, Washington, and Giants, all being a game or two in flux, right? I think there's a game or two in flux. I'd be really surprised if any of those three teams was in the playoffs. I think there would be a lot that has to happen in the rest of the NFC for the Cowboys, Washington, and Giants to find themselves in a playoff spot.
Yeah, I think that's perfectly fair. And I have a very similar kind of rundown. The records are different and the layout, so I'll go through it, but okay. We're not too far off on any of these, so that much is good. I'm going to start with the bottom as well. I have the Giants there in the basement. I have them at 5-12 this season. Not an ideal schedule for the Giants, who really need a lot of breaks this year to be able to compete. I know that they are saying, they're going to go with Daniel Jones and happy to get him Malik Neighbors and get some talent around him. But there's just so much that needs to go right for them for this to be able to be even a close to manageable year in terms of rebounding from what they have been in the past. So that much alone is too tall of a hill to climb for the New York Giants, especially because I don't see anywhere in their schedule where they can really kind of garner momentum. There's all these like little pockets of maybe they can piece together a 2-game win streak. And then after that, it just seems too difficult to keep that momentum going. So when you're already talking about a team that is, missing a lot of talent in a lot of key places in a relatively difficult division, also pair that with the schedule that's not super conducive to getting some win streaks. It's kind of the perfect storm in many ways for the Giants.
Now, do you mean tough division in the sense, I think you agree with me, it's not actually a great division, but these teams play each other tough. Like
they cannibalize each other. It's one of those divisions where even when the AFC North is not up to snuff amongst its contemporaries in the league, they're going to beat each other up and go 3-3 in the division.
No one's going 6-0 in the division. It's just not happening. It's just not happening.
Yeah. I actually, now that I'm looking at it, I didn't even notice it. I have every team going 3-3 in the division. That's probably not going to happen in the NFC East, but nonetheless, that's what I've got there.
It feels like that, though. It feels like
it does. It does. They are they really do that to each other. We'll get to the Washington Commanders next here. I have them winning 8 games, though. I have them at 8-9 this season, and most of that is because I think Jaden Daniels gives this offense a new element that they just haven't been able to have for a long time. I don't know if Jaden Daniels is going to pan out as like a long-term great solution at quarterback. That much is obviously still to be seen. I really only feel good about one rookie quarterback in that sense this year. But Jaden Daniels certainly has the talent to be a dynamic guy. And for a team that's got a rebuilding offensive line and outside of Terry McLaurin, some questions at like what's going on with the skill player positions. Jaden Daniels' skill set is best suited for a team that, is going to need him to bail out of pockets occasionally and create and keep drives moving. And he's got the arm talent to get those deep balls to Terry McLaurin much more routinely than Terry's been able to see early in his career. So I think that gets them to a competitive place. I think eight wins is their ceiling. I just have them reaching that, especially because I think Dan Quinn, whether or not he pans out as a head coach is yet to be seen. But the guy's been to a Super Bowl. He's had elite defenses throughout his career. And so I feel like he's going to get this defense to a place where, yes, they don't have much talent, but they're going to play tough and they'll probably be in more games than we think. That to me gets Washington to 8-9. I also have the Dallas Cowboys at 8-9, though they finish one place higher in the divisional standings. Again, I mean, the second year in a row, I was surprised at Dallas last year a little bit. Wasn't surprised at how they performed in the postseason because, again, this is kind of what we've talked about with Dallas for years, is they are a regular season team. I thought the wheels were going to fall off last year. I'm going to double down and say that they finally fall off this year. We'll see if that actually happens. But no, for all the reasons you said, the contract disputes are in place. I don't feel confident in Dak Prescott as a quarterback that's going to elevate the play of the rest of the team. He's a perfectly fine quarterback to have. He's kind of Kirk Cousins in that area where if things around you are working well and you have some playmakers at your disposal, he's going to win a lot of games. But yes, the playmakers have started to dissipate over the years. Who's the clear wide receiver 2? I don't know if they have one. Tony Pollard leaves, and he even had kind of a rough year last year. So, yeah, this offensive line's getting worse. And like we've said, the defense is surface level in terms of a couple big name stars. You've got Diggs, you've got Parsons. But really, when we peel away the first layer, how does this look? I think depth is a big problem for them, and they can't afford an injury to any of their top playmakers on defense. Otherwise, it's going to be pretty rough. And to your point as well, losing Dan Quinn hurts. And this Mike McCarthy offense, we just haven't seen it really come to fruition yet. So, I'm going to pick this year for the year that the wheels fall off. And hey, much like we've talked about with the Steelers, when the wheels fall off and you're 8-9, that's a good thing. Yeah. So for Dallas, maybe you actually want to have like a 6-win season to finally just tear this thing down to the studs and rebuild. But Dallas is never awful. They're just seldom great either. And that's kind of where they land this year. Eagles win the division here. 11-6 is what I have them at. It does feel a little bit rich. I have 11 wins as the ceiling. You have 10, one game apart. But I think for the Eagles, the biggest thing is that their schedule doesn't have any stretches where I'm like, that's rough. They don't have any rough stretches from what I can tell.
They have bounce back games available.
I don't see them losing 3 games in a row all season. I have them losing 2 games in a row at one period, but yeah, I can't find gaps in the season that seem to be very difficult. So even if they're in a little bit of a funk, they're going to have opportunities to get out of that early on. One of their tougher out of division matchups might be the Cleveland Browns, and they get the Browns off of a bye. And they get to play the NFC South. And so the NFC East plays the NFC South. That's kind of a gift, especially for the better teams like the Eagles, to where they can play bully ball. I mean, they can go 3-1 in those games easily. And so I just think when you sprinkle in, some matchups like that, the Eagles, I could very, very well see a path to success for them. Totally. Honestly, I think a big game is going to be that week 1 game against Green Bay. If they lose that game, then I really feel like they let one get away, because I think they should beat Green Bay, and I think it would be an early sign for the Eagles to say we've kind of washed this stench off of how we ended last season, and it's at home.
Well, it's in Brazil,
Falcons the next, or in Brazil. Sorry, yeah, you're right. They're just the home team, but yes, in Brazil. So you're on the big stage nonetheless. And then you get to play the Falcons the next week, and then the Saints after that. I mean, you have an opportunity to start 3-0. But that first game is definitely a big one there. So Eagles winning the division at 11-6, followed by the Cowboys at 8-9, missing the playoffs. The Washington Commanders missing the playoffs at 8-9 as well. and then the New York Giants at 5-12 to
So
round
our
out
biggest
the NFC.
disagreement there is that Washington, I have them at the bottom and as far as their projections as a
The
5-win
bottom
team.
of the conference, really, yeah.
Well, you have them at an 8-win team. I think to me, and
Yeah.
I just want to point out to our listeners, the biggest difference if you listen to what Dan and I broke down, it is I have less faith in the fact that they can stay healthy through the year. I just think they're so thin to where if Terry McLaurin misses a game, who is
That's
Jane
true.
Daniels like what is he doing? But if they have a good health year and with attractive Cliff Kingsbury, it's like attractive guy, looks like Ryan Gosling with Cliff Kingsbury, it's going to be really interesting to see this offense. I think the other thing for me is I have a little less faith in Dan Quinn as far as what does Dan Quinn look like when he's starting a program. Dan Quinn, remember when he took over the Falcons, they were ready to win, and he kind of was born on third base, took him to the Super Bowl, and that was such a devastating loss. It just kind of crippled the rest of his time there. And then he spent so many years just back in Dallas, like building that epic defense and filling that role. What is he going to do with a rookie? We've never seen him with a rookie quarterback, with a young guy, with you need to, we don't even have an owner who's done this before. Like it's just feels so new. I just worry about that, but also maybe they don't know what they don't know, Yeah, it could be refreshing. So I wouldn't be shocked if Washington ends up closer to 8 wins and not 5 wins. I think I'm just betting a little bit on they're going to hit a stretch during the season where the rookie looks like a rookie and maybe someone's missing time and he's playing well, but it doesn't mean it's necessarily translating to wins. I think that's our biggest disagreement in the East. Don't you agree?
Yeah, I would say so. Probably as well. And
but
there
it's
is
not like it's not like you had him in the playoffs and I don't. It's not, you know what I mean? Neither of us are high on Washington or hating on them.
Yeah, I mean, and they have a stretch where they play Pittsburgh, they played Philly, and they played Dallas, in 3 straight weeks. That's tough, and they get Pittsburgh off of a bye. And then later to end the year, it's Philly, the Falcons, who are probably going to be, potentially fighting for a playoff spot at that time, and then Dallas again. So that's 2 big 3-game stretches there. That's tough for Washington. Yeah. But I do feel the rest of their schedule, especially early on, is manageable to where maybe they could bank 5 wins in the first 9 weeks.
Yeah,
go 5-4, and then maybe they're putting themselves in a position to, get to that 8-win mark. So
yeah.
All right, let's move on to the NFC South. So we have the same hierarchy there for the NFC East. Curious to see if the same goes for the NFC South here. I'll kick us off here for this one. We'll kind of do a boomerang effect as we go through these divisions here. Carolina comes in at the bottom yet again. I wanted to feel good about Carolina, but I just don't know what Dave Canales brings. I hope it works out for Carolina's sake, for Dave Canales' sake, for Bryce Young's sake. But there's a lot of unknowns. I don't feel like they improved enough. They lose Brian Burns. They lose their best player on their team for what seems like the 3rd or 4th year in a row, and just continue to purge this team. Yeah. First year, under a new GM. So that much I understand. And, maybe this draft ends up, proving well for them. But yeah, it's just, I think Bryce Young will improve. I think he'll be a better quarterback this year. I just don't know how much it'll translate to wins. 4-13 is what I have them at. And, that's what did they win last year? Was it 2 wins in 2023? So a slight improvement from last year. But, they bring in Deontay Johnson. They still have Adam Thielen, who's yet another year older. Xavier Legette, I wasn't super high on him, to be honest, coming out of the University.
I love his interviews.
Yeah. Guy's got a Southern drawl if I've ever heard one. So, there's that. They got, their rookie standout running back from Texas, Jonathan Brooks, but he's not going to play probably for the first month of the season because he's recovering from an injury. So there's just, a lot stacked up against this team. I just don't know what's going right for Carolina. And so another year of poor play hopefully gets them back into a good position for next year to draft again and could get themselves into a position for 2025 and beyond to start turning this thing around. I have the New Orleans Saints coming in at third in the division here, and talk about the wheels falling off. I don't know what happens if they start Derek Carr all season long or if Spencer Rattler gets in. I think I'm kind of assuming that this might be the case either way. 5-12 I have for the Saints. I just don't know how much I believe in this team anymore. Um, you know, Obviously, they have some dudes that can play. They've got, a young ascending A.T. Perry, Rashid Shaheed, Chris Olave, some good weapons. Alvin Kamara, obviously, in the backfield. Offensive line is starting to fall apart a little bit. Defense is very old now. I don't know how much faith I have in this defensive unit, as it hasn't seemed to be gaining any, new momentum or new fill-ins as some of the older players get siphoned out. So yeah, Cam Jordan's going to be great, and Marshawn Lattimore's good, and all of that stuff. But overall, I just don't. I feel like the Saints are the most blah team in the NFL. Now,
Well, that's a good way to
5-12 is
put it.
probably their floor, and I realize that I'm having them pretty low here. I could see them, but getting to 7-ish wins. But I mean, I think 5 to 7 wins is kind of that marker for the New Orleans Saints here in 2024. I feel like the Bucks have proven that they're solid with Baker Mayfield, and they seem to have gotten better. I feel like the Falcons got better. Where did New Orleans get much better? I just don't feel confident there. I have the Buccaneers coming in second in the division at 9-8. So I have them competing here, but they are going to be missing the playoffs at 9-8 in the NFC. Barely made it last year, and kudos to them. I still think they're a scrappy team and good and talented. It's nothing against the Bucks. It's more so what I think the Falcons have elevated to with getting Kirk Cousins, and so that's really all I have to say about the Bucks there. I think they're going to be a competitive team, but the Atlanta Falcons with Kirk Cousins, pending a healthy season, of course, go 10-7. A lot of this does depend on Raheem Morris, how he's able to coach. We just don't know that. I do know that he's had a lot of praise from a lot of head coaches throughout the league, including Mike Tomlin, who has said for a decade now that Raheem Morris is the greatest coach that's not a head coach in the league. I think Mike Tomlin's a pretty good evaluator of talent and motivators. And so I'm gonna go ahead and say that he, as well as obviously getting the praise from Sean McVay and having a front row seat to that system for years, is gonna pay dividends here with Kirk Cousins and the dearth of talent that they have in Atlanta. 10-7 gets them the division, gets them in the playoffs. So that's how I have it shaping up. Atlanta at the top, 10-7. Bucks at 9-8, missing the playoffs. Saints at 5-12. Panthers at 4-13.
Phew, okay, I like it. We have some differences, so I like where this is going. I will start
Sounds
with
good.
what we have. The same is that in fourth place is the Carolina Panthers. I just want to quickly remind everyone: Bryce Young threw 11 touchdown passes last year and 10 interceptions, and he started 16 games. Remember how ugly it was. There were horrendous games from him. An improvement will be 20 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. Like, that will be a massive improvement. And I will just say this: I'm with you on, I don't know what Dave Canales brings. I hope he brings some of what he did with Baker Mayfield last year, and just, hey, we're going to push the ball down the field. We're not going to be afraid to make mistakes. And the one thing the Panthers did really improve their team on, yes, their defense got worse, but they improved their offensive line greatly. They signed the 2 guards. They spent over $100 million on guards, and they know they had to do it because pressure up the middle on that small quarterback was the thing that killed him. So I think this Panthers team is going to be more competitive in the sense that you're not going to have games where it's the third quarter and they have no points and Bryce Young is still like 9 for 24 and like 88 yards and just horrendous stat lines. I think they're going to be more competitive, but I don't see them as a winning football team yet. They need another year. The problem is they still don't have their second round pick next year. Like they need another year of bringing in some new talent and free agents to be sniffing the playoffs. The Saints, I have them in third. I have them a little better off than you do. I don't disagree with you necessarily on the Saints. I think they easily could fall apart. I think, though, this is a team that plays well in the early part of the year and falls apart later. So I think they get to 7 wins. I have them at 7-10. I think that they still around week 12, week 13, the division looks like a 3-team race like it did last year. I think the Saints fall off late, though. I think a lot of it will be due to age on that defense. I think a lot of it will be due to what's going on with Derek Carr. I don't think Saints fans have any sort of love for Derek Carr right now, and will absolutely be willing to throw him under the bus if things go poorly. And when there's just even that going into a season, it doesn't mean you're just not going to have a successful season. It's honestly, I make the argument for, and I'll do it later here for another team, that a massive loss for them is actually, you could argue, a gain mentally. But I think the Saints have this looming, like, we don't really care about Derek Carr, and after this year we can get out of his contract. So if things suck, just get rid of him. That's a looming weight over the franchise going into a year. I have them at 7 wins, mainly because I think they do have offensive talent and they will win 2 games against the Panthers. So I think that helps out a little bit. I have the Atlanta Falcons in 3rd at 10-7. And I have the Bucks in 1st at 10-7. So I have them at the same record, and I'm going to take the Bucks winning a head-to-head matchups to get the Bucks into the playoffs and winning the division. I just want to remind everyone, the Bucks won a playoff game at home last year and then went to Detroit and pushed the Lions
competitive game
into the fourth quarter of that game. There's a lot to like on this Bucks offense. Rashad White, the running back, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin are all there. I love the young tight end, Cade Otton. They have one of the best offensive tackles in the league, and Tristan Wirfs was just re-signed. Their other tackle, Gadecki, is good. They have Cody Mauch, really good guard. They have a very solid offensive line to protect Baker. And then on defense, Kalijah Cansey, Vita Vea, KJ Britt, Levante David, Jordan Whitehead, and Antoine Winfield Jr., the corners. I think they're going to play sound defense. I think they're the best defense in this division with a really good defensive head coach. And I think there's something with Baker Mayfield. He was on Part of My Take earlier this year, this summer, a couple weeks ago. And man, it just blew me away. I was as critical on Baker as anyone, right? And I was as critical on Baker for not taking the deal with the Browns and thinking too highly of himself and all this stuff. He sounds like a different human being. He sounds like a mature, back to kind of being fun, but his head is on his shoulders. I think I just see him having another solid year, another 25 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, moving the ball well and winning gritty games in a tough division. And I think Atlanta, to me, has a way higher ceiling than Tampa. Like, I think Atlanta's ceiling is like 12 wins. I don't think they reach that, though, because I think they also have a looming question. I have no idea what Kirk Cousins is going to be like. No idea. No idea how he's going to respond after that really devastating injury. He's already not mobile. I think he's going to be even more afraid to be mobile because of the injury. And also, he is a quarterback that as soon as he has week 4, maybe they're 1-2, and he throws an interception early in the first half, and you could hear the fans booing, and it creates this kind of like, oh, should Michael Penix? I mean, like, it's a looming thing. And I think that's a bad thing for Kirk if he struggles. Also, I get everyone's really high on Raheem Morris. He was not great his first run as a head coach. It was very underwhelming. I think the second time around will be better, but I'm not ready to be like crown him. The Falcons with a new head coach, a new quarterback, are just going to go and win 12 games and win the division. I think this will be a really tight race between the Saints, the Falcons, the Bucks till about Thanksgiving. I think the Saints will fall off. I think the Bucks and the Falcons will come down to the last weeks. And at this point in time, I think there's just something we're going to look at this and be like, come December, and be like, look at Baker and the Bucks. They're doing it again. Their ceiling is low. They're probably going to lose in the first or second round of the playoffs, but they're just building off of this, and this is probably it. I mean, how long can you keep doing with some of these veterans? But I think I just got a feeling they got one more run in them because the division right now still feels like it's up for grabs because Atlanta's got so much that's new and question marks. And I think the Penix thing will be a factor on it as well. I really do. So I have the Bucks at 10-6 making the playoffs. I will tell you, I don't have the Falcons in the playoffs. So Bucks 10-6, first place, Falcons 10-6, missing the playoffs. Saints 7-10, Panthers 4-13.
There you go. Yeah, I could absolutely see that either way. I have a 1-win difference between the two. So if you flip the Falcons with the Bucks in my prediction, I think that could easily.
And you have the Bucks not in the playoffs, right?
Correct. Yeah, they would be the 8th seed in this situation, just barely missing out. I think there's the stretch from week 7 to 10 where they play
it is tough.
Baltimore, Falcons, Chiefs, and 49ers.
That is tough.
That's rough.
If you keep looking at that schedule, because after that they have a stretch too where it opens up as well, and they have some winnable games. Does. And I think they win games early. I think the Bucks, people forget, like, oh, Miami, it's hot in Miami. It's bleeping hot in Tampa too. Like they have a Florida advantage early in the year against a couple teams. I think they could sneaky get off to a really good start in their schedule. But they do have they play the Chiefs. But I also think they could be that team that, like, the Chiefs lose to the Bucks, right? Like where you're like, oh, that's a weird one.
They could pull off the upset.
This is a veteran Bucks team with a veteran quarterback who's playing now with the confidence of a contract and a chip on his shoulder. The most important thing for Baker Mayfield was getting the contract. Now the most important thing for Baker Mayfield is extending his career. And he extends his career by being a really good starter and making the playoffs for the next two of the next 3 years. And then he gets another contract, right? Like this contract is a great contract, but Baker could get another contract, maybe not with the Bucks, but somewhere else, purely based on what he's able to do this year as well. I think he knows that there's a lot of weight to it. And again, I'm so torn on Kirk. I just don't know how to feel early on in the year. I feel like the Atlanta could get into a hole to start the year that then they maybe climb out of, but maybe it's too little too late.
Fair enough. All right, we'll go over to the NFC West. I'll let you take it away this time. Give us your thoughts on how this one plays out.
So this is tough because I like Seattle a lot based on their personnel, but I don't love the brand new head coach and the change of regime. People are only focusing on the Patriots. Like, oh, Bill Belichick's gone. It's kind of like Alabama football. You forget, like Nick Saban is retired. Like he's not coaching Alabama. They play in 2 weeks and it won't be Nick Saban on the sideline. It's the same thing with Pete Carroll. He was there a long time and had a very big presence in that building. And he's replaced by a guy that if you walked by him on the street in McDonald's, you wouldn't even know. You wouldn't know. You could show me a picture of him right now. I'd be like, I don't know if that's the head coach of the Seattle Seahawks or not. I think that they have a bunch of talent. I just don't know how buttoned up they're going to be this year and in a division that's really bloody. All of that being said, I have Arizona in 4th place in the division at 6-11. I think it's a feisty Arizona team. I think it's an Arizona team that you see, they didn't maybe live up to expectations, but it's like okay. In year 2 for Gannon, Kyler Murray's now fully healthy. He's got Marvin Harrison Jr. The defense adds a couple pieces, and all of a sudden, this is a feisty Arizona Cardinals team that is, I think Arizona could be one of those teams at the end of the year you look at and you go, oh man, if you would have flipped their one-loss game, one possession games that were turned to a loss, they would go from like a 6-win team to like a 9-win team or a 10-win team, right? I think they're going to be in some games. I think they're going to put up some points. I think Kyler's going to have overall a quality year. I just think their defense is going to let them down at times because they just still don't have the playmakers on that defense for me to be like excited about, to where they have one guy who can look at me like, you have to game plan for him. They don't have a Myles Garrett. They don't have a Nick Bosa. They don't have a Fred Warner. You know what I mean? A guy you just, a Roquan Smith. You're like, I got a game plan for that guy. And they're still missing that. They need that. I have Seattle at 6-11 as well, with Arizona. I do think this is the floor for Seattle. I think their range is 6 to 8 wins. I have them at the floor of the 6 because I have truly no idea what to expect from their new young defensive coach that comes in. I also feel like Seattle's the team that halfway through the season, as we get close to the trade deadline, they could be like, listen, now is the time for us to get stuff for DK Metcalf. Now is the time for us to get stuff for Tyler Lockett. We have Jackson Smith and Jigba. He's going to be our number one guy going forward. We know it's not going to be the case. We know we're not going to be banking on Geno Smith and the kid who's just in Washington, who was also at North Carolina, who's now the backup quarterback there. I'm forgetting his name, but he looks like Baker Mayfield. Sam Howell. It's not going to be either of those two guys. I could see Sam Howell getting some starts maybe late in the year because they kind of sell pieces off. And it would make sense, right? Like, I think Seattle's in this spot where they have some nice pieces that you want to build around, and then you have some guys that aren't on the timeline anymore. DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, who's like, go get a second round pick for DK Metcalf, right? Like, you need that more than you need DK Metcalf as you're rebuilding this program. So I think that's kind of why I'm going that way with Seattle. Also, it's tough. The NFC West is a tough division. And you look at some of those games, you're just like, I just don't know what to do here. I have the San Francisco 49ers as the number 2 seed in the division as a 11-6 team. I have them in the playoffs as the 6th seed in the playoffs. I think you saw a snippet of the struggles that I think the Niners are going to go through just last night in the preseason game, where Brock Purdy was like 2 for 11 for 11 yards or something like that. I mean, he looked bad. That was not his starting offensive line. No Kittle, no Debo or Ayuk. It was ugly. It looked bad. And I think there's going to be right now no Trent Williams in camp. So even if he comes in and plays, if they get the deal done at the 11th hour, he'll be rusty to start the year. Ayuk, depending on what happens, I hear he's a guaranteed stealer every 10 minutes on Twitter, and it still hasn't happened. So I think that this is a Niners team that's going to start the season off slow, get hot, and then it's an old 49ers team. And remember, last year, one of the things that was unheard of for the 49ers, because they were like the most injured team in the NFL the last 5 years, they had almost perfect health last year, and it helped them get their way to a Super Bowl. I don't see that sustaining for an older Niners team. If Christian McCaffrey has to miss 2 weeks because he tweaks a hamstring or rolls an ankle, this is a Niners team that could go on a 2-game losing streak against teams that like an Arizona or a Seattle that gets them when they shouldn't get them, right? But this is also a Niners team that is going to get up for big games, I think. And they play like the Bills. I think they play the Chiefs. And I think they're going to win some games because they're just a physical team when healthy and a really well-coached team when healthy. I think this is a down step year for the Niners. I think this is maybe a one-and-out year for the Niners. And I think the key storyline we're going to be talking about in a year from now is, okay, what do you do with Purdy? Do you pay him now? He had an okay year. It wasn't as good as it was 2 years ago. And I think Purdy's going to be an interesting storyline throughout the year. I don't think he's going to have as good of a season as he's had. I have the Rams winning the division. I have them at 12-5 as the 2 seed in the NFC. I'm high on the Rams. I think this is a young, explosive defense. I think this is an offense that is absolutely loaded with weapons, with good running backs, an offensive line now that is probably around like number 9, 10, something like that, is an offensive line where the young guys have stepped up. The veterans have meshed really well. They have a tight end I like. They have 3 wide receivers that I like. They have a quarterback that I love in the NFC. They have a coach that I love in the NFC. And it just feels like last year was the 2015 Cubs year. Like, it just is that perfect building year, right? Won the Super Bowl, fell apart, build back up. Now they're back. And I think you're going to see a really, really great year from the Rams, the type of year where we're talking about Matt Stafford possibly adding an MVP to his resume. We're talking about Puka Nacua being a legitimate top 3 wide receiver in the NFL. We're talking about Cooper Kupp, if he's healthy, having a resurgence year. And we're talking about all these new faces on defense that are stepping up and playing really good football. I think this Rams team has a schedule that's workable. It's not great, but it's workable. And I think they're able to go 5-1 in division. I can see them splitting with the Niners and beating Seattle and beating Arizona, each 2-0-2-0. That's how I got them to 12 wins. That's why I have the Rams atop of the NFC West.
All right. Well, we
now
do
remember
have
I called my shot. I called my shot with the Rams last year, and it didn't happen. So I'm calling my shot with the Rams again. I felt like it was a year early, but I was still pumped the Rams made the playoffs last year. I wasn't totally off on that.
Call.
I think I'm finally now my timeline and the Rams timeline is matched up.
Yeah, I mean, if viewers and listeners remember last year, I was predicting the Rams' downfall, so I was certainly incorrect about that. My two downfall predictions of the Rams and the Bills proved not to be true. I'm gonna reverse course, this time around, but we'll get there when we do.
I'm waiting for that AFC Bills thoughts because yes, you were the downfall of the Bills last year.
Yeah,
I'm waiting for that.
I was a year early on that one too. We'll see. The Cardinals and Seahawks, we have the exact same predictions on. I have them also both going 6-11, and I have the Cardinals being in the basement of the division, but also feeling like it's a strong 6-11 if there is such a thing. I feel more confident in the Cardinals being a competitive unit next year, and moving forward. I have them on an upward trajectory of sorts. What was your question?
Do you think at the end of the year, because I predicted the end of the year, Cardinals fans will feel better about where they are versus Seahawks fans, but they'll both have been 6-11. And I think the key will be because the Seahawks won't know what they're doing with the quarterback. I think Arizona will know Kyler's our guy. We just need to now build this roster back up.
Yeah, no, I absolutely think that they're going to.
Okay, we're on the same page.
Yeah, get strong throughout the year, feel comfortable, just feel like one or two things are missing that's gonna, get them to the point where they're just not able to put together a big enough season-long resume to actually be successful. But overall, the signs will be there and the indicators that Kyler Murray in this offense with Marvin Harrison Jr. and the Jonathan Gannon like full season with Kyler type of thing will be fully underway. And I think come 2025, we'll have a much rosier picture of what Arizona looks like. Seattle is kind of the same thing in that, they are in that purgatory situation right now with Geno Smith, and they've got weapons, but I do see them probably being one of those trade deadline people that do sell off a little bit to try and acquire the next phase of Seattle football. McDonald also just not sure exactly. Like I hadn't heard about him. Raheem Morris, I feel more comfortable saying that I think Raheem Morris is going to pan out well.
He already had a job as a head coach. Like he's got something to fall back on, right?
Yeah, and he's just he's well respected throughout the league. I'm sure McDonald is. I'm sure Gerard Mayo is too. But I know less about those guys in terms of their capacity as head coach and what they bring to the table. I know McDonald had one heck of a defense in Baltimore, and maybe he'll be able to bring that swagger over to Seattle. But they've just got more issues that they'll have to iron out because they just don't have a ceiling offensively. They have if everything stays together, we'll be slightly above average or just average. And that's not going to be good enough in the NFC West, let alone in the climate of today's NFL to be able to compete for a playoff spot, in my view. I have the Rams coming in second, but I have them making the playoffs at 10-7. So they showed me enough last year when so many things were teed up for them to not have a great season, and they were able to still make the playoffs. I still worry about the health of Matthew Stafford long term. I still worry about the offense slowing down. Is Kyron Williams going to be able to repeat one hell of a season last year running the football? Then again, they drafted Blake Corum. Maybe he kind of steps in a little bit more.
Fantasy sleeper, Blake Corum.
Yeah, very well could be. But yeah, overall, I think they're a playoff team. That defense they showed were, a bunch of no names that were able to actually put out one hell of a season out there on tape. So yeah, I feel good about them. And they still have a Super Bowl winning head coach, a Super Bowl winning quarterback. They have Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, some great weapons, Kyron, Tyler Higbee, like a lot of good things going for this team, even if age on the offensive side of the ball is eventually going to catch up with them. Whether that happens this year or not, I don't know, but I will say they have enough to get there. but I don't think it gets them over the hump for San Fran in this division. I have San Francisco as the 1 seed again this season. They've been in this
Noisy,
win
Dan.
now mode for
Noisy,
so
Dan.
long.
Noisy.
Noisy. Hey, I have them at 13-4, winning the division,
Ooh,
being the 1
okay.
seed
Okay.
in the NFC. Look, I mean, everybody's returning. And whether what happens with Brandon Ayuk, I don't know. But they had more capital that they put in to get Ricky Pearsall. Juwan Jennings showed up late last year. I mean, they have pieces to fill in those gaps that exist. Christian McCaffrey won Offensive Player of the Year. I don't see any signs of him slowing down. It's going to happen eventually. I just don't think this year is going to be the year that happens. And I think the opposite is actually the case for how they're going to start versus finish this year. I think they're going to start fairly strong this season and kind of wither towards the back half of the season. Whether that's probably just the age of this group, especially on offense, starting to kind of rear its ugly head, and that combining with just the matchups that they have later in the season. I have them losing 3 games in a row from week 14 to 16 late in the year and having to kind of bounce back strong to have a couple good finishes against the Lions and the Cardinals to end the season. I just think that they have the makings of a very workable schedule early on here, especially because they're home 5 games out of the first 8. I think they win opening Monday Night Football against the Jets. And then from there, they play the Vikings and the Rams. I think they beat the Rams there. Then they play the Patriots and Cardinals. I mean, to me,
you
that's
have them
2
starting
wins
5-0. You have them basically starting 5-0.
I have them starting 6-0 because I have them beating Seattle as well. And then I actually the one
Chiefs.
game that I picked them to win that they maybe shouldn't was that Chiefs game. So I actually have them starting off extremely strong. I have them on an insane winning streak to begin the year. And then things start to fall off towards the back half of the season. And I feel really confident in this defense. It's a really strong unit. They're young enough. And as long as that offensive line kind of stays intact, I feel very comfortable about Kyle Shanahan, Brock Purdy, with all of the weapons that they have. Again, I don't know how much a Brandon Ayuk trade figures into this. I imagine it probably would eat into a win here or there for me. But right now, they've got all the weapons at their disposal. They're running it back again. I feel the sense of urgency has never been higher for San Francisco than it is right now. And I just think that they'll rise to that occasion in terms of the regular season output. They're still going to have to go on a tear in the postseason to be able to finally get over that hump that they have been trying to get over for so long. But I have confidence in how their schedule shapes up for them and how the regular season shapes up for them overall. So 13-4, number 1 seed for San Fran.
That's hefty.
6th seed for the Rams at 10-7. And then I have Seattle and Arizona missing the playoffs at 6-11 apiece.
I think what we see is the biggest difference is you're relying on the experience and the names of San Francisco, and I'm gonna bet on the fact that I think they are gonna be a little more beat up. The age will catch up to them a bit. They maybe lose a game they should win, and then lose some of those big matchups like against the Chiefs or something like that. And I have a young Rams team that is going to play above their name, right? You can't name guys on the Rams defense, but they're going to show up and ball out because they're young and they're hungry and they're really, really talented. I think that's our biggest difference so far, I'd argue, in going through this list. I think that's a bigger difference than Bucks, Falcons even, because I think that that's a lot of 13 wins for this Niners team after how noisy they've been this offseason. You're putting a lot more faith in them than I am. That's for sure.
Yeah. I mean, it's Kyle Shanahan and it's Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, Christian McCaffrey. I just it's hard for me to.
Do you think right now here on this August 19th that Ayuk will be a Niner when the season starts?
I think he will. Yeah.
You think a deal done Niner? Like he's signed and he's a Niner?
I think he'll be with I think he'll eventually get a deal done. Yeah, I guess that's a good question. I don't know if it happens by week 1, I guess. But I think he gets a deal done and remains a 49er. That just kind of the feeling I have right now based on how all of this back and forth has gone. Usually when the pendulum swings this much, it just kind of reverts back to the boring,
Yeah.
where it started type of thing. And so that's what I envision is going to happen. And it's the best situation for Brandon Ayuk in my
Mhm.
view. So that would make the most sense. And that's why I have all this confidence in them. Um, Maybe they don't start as strong as I predicted, but I honestly, I do think they'll be at the top of the NFC come the end of the season. All right, let's get to the NFC North to round out these predictions. Um, I'll let you react to mine so that you can give your full,
Okay.
uh, and end this show on a high note with your Bears and the NFC North predictions.
Who knows?
Um, I have the Vikings at the bottom. I don't think that's too controversial. 6-11 is what I have them at. I actually think Sam Darnold's going to be pretty decent with the Vikings. I just think there's too many holes defensively. And I just think there are going to be some hiccups early on because it is a new quarterback and a new system. But I think overall, Sam Darnold maybe will surprise some people. And that's largely because of Kevin O'Connell. I think it's the KOC effect, not the Darnold effect, that
Yeah.
will make this happen. But I think he'll be good enough to where they'll be competitive. And, much like how I feel about the Cardinals, is that they will be a team that can, you don't want to sleep on and might be a trap game for some teams throughout the season. But, aside from them having a great slew of weapons, TJ Hawkinson's going to be hurt and not ready for them early on. Their defense is still a big question mark. Their offensive line's a question mark. So there are things there that I worry about. And in a really ramped up in terms of competitiveness NFC North division, that's going to make life even more difficult for them. I have them going 1-5 in division play here this year. Coming in as the 7th seed in the playoffs, I have the Green Bay Packers going 10-7 this year. I think they're good, and I think Matt LaFleur is fantastic. He deserves the benefit of the doubt. I'll probably have the Packers making the playoffs until they don't with Matt LaFleur. Jordan Love also, I think, is a really solid quarterback. I think he's proven enough in the 8 games that he was great last year that he's solid and, has a career out in front of him. But I'm still not sold on what the extent of that career will be, or if he's a guy that earned, the $200 million contract that he's received. But they're sticking with him. He clearly, fits well within their system. I also think they have a lot of number 2 wide receivers. Not convinced they have a clear number 1, but like 3 or 4 number 2s. And, defensively, they got some dudes. But as a unit, I see a little bit of regression there on that side of the ball as well. So that's why I have them at 10-7. I have the Chicago Bears at number 5 seed, the first wild card team at 11-6. I am excited to report. I think maybe this is their ceiling. But I also think their floor is 9. I think 9-11 is the floor. I think it'd be a big disappointment for Chicago if they win 7 games this year. With how I've seen Caleb Williams perform, the offensive, firepower that they have on this team, and the much improved defense that we saw at the end of last year. I expect that to continue and them to start strong defensively to begin this year, which is only going to aid and help a young Caleb Williams, who I think is going to push heavily for Rookie of the Year, which actually I know we don't have this slated for this year, but I am going to go out and just say it right now. I know that we didn't plan on saying this. Usually in the past, we've done kind of our bold predictions for the season, and maybe we still will kind of sneak that in at some point before the season begins. But since we're here on the Bears and talking Caleb Williams, I'm going to put in my prediction that Caleb Williams, a year after CJ Stroud broke the record, is going to break the record for most consecutive pass attempts without an interception to begin a
Okay.
career, which I consider not only to be bold for just, to do it the year after it was broken, but also bold because Caleb Williams is a gunslinger kind of guy.
A little
I
bit, yeah.
still think he is going to break that CJ Stroud record last year of pass attempts to begin a career without an interception. We could book it right there. And really, that's also gonna give me the front running seat for offensive rookie of the year as well. But yeah, 11-6. I feel really good about this Bears team. I think you should too. I think despite it being preseason, I've seen enough to know that Caleb Williams is going to be a solid NFL pro, and that's light years ahead of where the Bears were even a couple years ago. But now they've added Keenan Allen to the mix, Roma Dunze. They are fully rounded out in terms of their offensive skill set, and that defense is looking better. The only wild card to me that could screw this all up is Matt Eberflus. So we'll see if the guy's got a good season in him. But I do think he's a little bit more underrated, especially with how he was able to keep that team afloat last year and get that defense turned around. And the number 2 seed atop the division, the Detroit Lions, coming in at 12-5. I feel good about this team yet again, doing what they did last year. There's something about the Lions, though, that makes me feel like a screw here or screw there. Like one thing comes undone, and it could start to get a little bit concerning early on, just because they have everything works very well in the structure that they have in place. But Jared Goff isn't the type of quarterback that, if Amon-Ra St. Brown goes down, or if the running game isn't up to snuff, do I have faith that Jared Goff is going to steady the ship and still keep them in the upper echelon? I mean, look, I have them as the 2 seed in the NFC, okay? But I just think, I don't know how much this team can weather a big issue. And not many teams can, but Kansas City can. I think San Fran can overall.
Yeah, the quarterback can
but
Jared Goff weather it. It's a great point.
Right. And so that's the concern I have. And on top of that, their schedule can be a bit rough. I mean, they end the season with the Bills, Bears, and 49ers. That's and the Packers in there. I mean, that's a tough 4-week stretch.
It's hard.
They're one of those teams too that doesn't have many pockets for a win streak, other than I think the beginning of the season. So this team has to come out strong. Mm-hmm. And if they do, I have them going 7-0 to begin the year. And so if they're able to do that, I think that a 12-5 is very much in play for them, and a 2 seed. Excited to hear what you have to say about the NFC North, though. So I'll toss it right to you right now.
I'll jump into it. I agree with you. I think the Vikings in the 4th spot at 6-11. The point I was trying to make earlier with the injury and a team that's benefiting from it, the Vikings absolutely are in that similar place that a Falcons and the Saints were 2 weeks ago, where you have a quarterback who feels like we're not invested in that quarterback necessarily long term. We're invested in that quarterback for right now. And yes, your fan base wants to win games, but as soon as things start going negatively, you're going to want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. And the fact that Darnold doesn't have to worry about the guy behind him. So when he throws a bad pick, it's still Darnold's job. It's not like all of a sudden you're going to see JJ warming up on the sidelines, right? Because he's out. If Derek Carr throws 2 bad picks in a game, all of a sudden you see Spencer Rattler warming up on the sideline, right? If Kirk Cousins is struggling in week 4 and the Falcons are 1-2 or 0-3, and he throws another pick early on, or he's ankle starts to get tight or something, you see Michael Penix warming up on the sideline. It's like career almost over type of stuff. When you get benched in that way, it's a demoralizing debility. Look what happened to Russell Wilson. He got benched, and now he may not even start this year to start the season. So it can happen that quick, and it's a ton of pressure. And I think so the pressure's off for Sam Darnold. The problem is it's also Sam Darnold, and I think his ceiling is just limited. And I think even with the dearth of weapons and the great coach, the biggest problem the Vikings have is they have the 4th most talented roster in a division that is probably the best division in football. Top to bottom, talent, coaching, everything, absolutely the best division, I think, in football. And I go to the number 3 team in this division, And I have them as the 7th seed in the playoffs, just like you. I have three teams, the Packers, Bears, and Lions all making the playoffs. The team I have coming in third in this division and making the playoffs as the 7th seed is the Chicago Bears at 11-6. I also have the Packers at 11-6 as the 5 seed. And then I have the Lions at 12-5 as the 1 seed. So I want to reveal all that. Now I can kind of go through it. Listen, the Lions, I agree with you. It's a really tough schedule. But I'm going to remind myself the Lions are a really tough, good football team. They are a really good football team. And unlike the Niners right now, everyone is in their prime. Like everyone is in their prime. You have tackles in your prime. You have guards in your prime. You have a center in his prime. You have 2 running backs in their prime. You have Amon-Ra St. Brown in his prime. You have a tight end who's entering his prime. He's a top 3-4 tight end of the league. You have a really great number 2 who's a burner in Jamison Williams who could take the top off a defense. You have a quarterback in his prime who's confident and comfortable now. He the bag, so he doesn't have to worry about his future. His future's set. He is the starting quarterback for the Detroit Lions in this era of Detroit Lions football. And then you have a defense that is improved. They actually have corners now that can help their pass rush out a little bit. You have Hutchinson, who's now entering his prime in year 3. We really loved the way he was strong at the end of last year. And more importantly, Dan, you have a coaching staff with Ben Johnson as the offensive coordinator. Again, that's the biggest addition by non-subtraction in the NFL. People are not talking about that. Remember, 7 months ago, when the season went anyway, Ben Johnson's going to get any job he wants. Ben Johnson's going to get any job he wants. He looked around and said, I don't want any of those jobs. I want to stay right here in Detroit with Dan Campbell. So the continuity between those two, I think, is what's also key. And also, there's still the Lions. And Dan Campbell, the way his ethos is, the way he coaches, they are not like, we're now the hunted. They are still the hunters. And they still have the chip on their shoulder, even though they were a play away from making a Super Bowl last year. I think the Lions, that's going to help propel the Lions through this tough schedule to earn the number 1 seed in the NFC and win the NFC North. Packers and Bears. I truly think it comes down to week 17. I think these teams are extremely, extremely equal, but in different senses. The Packers have a coaching edge. I trust Matt LaFleur a lot more than I trust Matt Eberflus. I think the quarterback position right now, I feel like it's a wash. It's a very tight race. I've seen more from Jordan Love, but I think Caleb Williams has a ceiling that is certainly, a 12-foot ceiling versus Jordan Love's 10-foot ceiling. And the difference in that 2 feet ceilings, as a homeowner, it's the difference between a house going for $300,000 or $200,000. And that could be the difference between a Hall of Good career and a Hall of Fame career. I truly feel that way from the early parts of watching Caleb. Obviously, it could become a disaster and Caleb can never turn out, but I think the potential is there for that. So I'm going to say quarterback's a watch. Bears have more weapons. The Bears have just more weapons. It's plain and simple. The Bears have a better offensive line. I think that's plain and simple as well. The Packers defense overall is very strong. The Packers have a really incredible culture, and the Packers have, again, such a coaching edge. And I think early season quarterback edge that's going to make this race for second extremely exciting. And I think it's going to make the race for the playoffs extremely exciting between the two. I can't in good conscience tell you right now the Bears are going to sweep the Packers. I think the Bears are going to beat the Packers in Chicago. Week 17, these two teams' records could be identical or a game off, and it could all come down to that Bears-Packers in Green Bay week 17. Am I confident enough? I haven't beaten the Packers enough in the last 20 years of my life to sit here and be dumb and just say, the Bears are going to beat the Packers week 17 and you're going to bet. It's like, I could do that, but I'm not gonna, because to me, I think it's silly. Like, objectively, these are two really good teams. These are two playoff teams, and these are two teams that could it go either way. I think both of their ceilings is 11 wins, and I think they both hit their ceilings at 11 wins. I think both fan bases should be pumped. I think the only bummer for both fan bases right now is that for the first time in the last 60 years, the Lions are a beast. And it just so happens that both of the young teams are peaking with the Bears and the Packers, and they have the big Lions right now in the division. I absolutely agree with you. I think Bears fans should be extremely confident. I think Bears fans should be extremely upset if this is a team below 500. The only way I could feel that I'm below 500 but feel confident is that then it would be obvious that there's one problem and it's an easily fixable problem, and being like, oh, we don't have the right head coach, right? Like, we have the right players, we have the right quarterback, we can score on offense, but our coach mismanages the clock, our coach mismanages timeouts, our coach mismanages going for it on fourth down versus not going for it on fourth down, our coach mismanages when he kicks a field goal versus when he punts, and we can look there and all just collectively say, we don't have the coach, a coach maybe who doesn't elevate his defense the way it should. I think that Matt Eberflus is going to have a really good year, and he is going to elevate his defense, and he's going to let his offense flourish and go off. That's why I have them as an 11-win team. If Andy Reid was coaching this team, I think the ceiling is maybe a 13, 14-win team, 12-win team, maybe. You know what I mean? I think Matt Eberflus will be the limit on this team, and that's going to be something that as Bears fans, we might have to grapple with in a year or two from now, right? We're going to have to maybe grapple with that. Right now, as of right now, I think we all would be extremely pumped to see the Chicago Bears in the playoffs as Bears fans. And I think they will be that team that gets into the playoffs with nothing to lose and might end up facing a team in the first round like a Bucs or an Eagles that limps into the playoffs. And it wouldn't shock me at all if the Bears pull up an upset in any way, shape, or form like that and find themselves kind of like the Packers last year. What are we doing in the second round of the playoffs? I don't know, but this is fucking wild, and let's just roll with it, right?
Right.
So to recap, in overall, I have the Lions as the number 1 seed in the NFC. I have the Rams as the number 2 seed in the NFC. I have the Buccaneers as the 3 seed. It's tied with the record of the Eagles, but I'm going to somehow say that it works out. The Bucs are the 3, Eagles are the 4. And then you have the Packers as the 5, edging out the Niners as the 6. The Bears fall into the 7. But the Packers, Niners, and Bears all have the same record. And they all have very different feeling type seasons. I think Packers fans could legitimately maybe be frustrated and disappointed with a wild card berth after the success they saw last year in the playoffs with this young team that's in win now mode right now, where you're not paying any of the skill position players, you're only paying your quarterback. True. You might got to say, hey, we got to win this division, where the Bears will be more than pumped to be in the dance. And I think that's a huge separation for them in the NFC. Any of those teams that I said to make the playoffs, I firmly believe the Rams and the Lions are the teams that I would say I would actually bet money on representing the NFC in the Super Bowl. I would say the Niners would be 3rd in that, Packers 4th, and I would put the Bears ahead of the Bucs. I don't know if I'd put them ahead of the Eagles. I might put the Eagles slightly ahead of the Bears, and then but ahead of the Bucs. I think the Bucs might win their division, but I think the Bears have a slightly higher ceiling than the Bucs, if that makes sense.
That's fair. Yeah. Now, so despite some similarities throughout the divisional standings, we have a completely different set of seeding for the NFC playoffs.
Yeah.
I have 49ers as the 1 seed, Lions as the 2, Eagles 3, Falcons 4, Bears 5, Rams 6, and Packers 7. And I mean, I feel confident in the top 3 seeds to represent the NFC. So 49ers, Lions, or Eagles, I feel confident in. I think the Eagles are going to have somewhat of a bounce back year, especially because I think Saquon Barkley provides such a big element to the offense that they didn't have last year. And, other than that, they still return all of the same, weapons on the outside, and Dallas Goedert coming in healthy. So I think that's going to be a big aspect for the Eagles. But yeah, all in all, I think we're pretty high on the Bears in terms of their first season with Caleb Williams. We have all of the same teams playing in the playoffs outside of the swap for the Buccaneers and the Falcons. So there is.
Dan, I want to ask you, here's we're looking through this and talking NFC. What's a team that you think maybe you pick them to be 3rd or 4th in that division, but you would say, I'm not shocked if they make the playoffs?
Ooh, well, I don't think I would be shocked if the Seattle Seahawks somehow managed to scrape by and go 9 and
Yeah.
8
They
and
have
make
they have a
the
top 5
playoffs.
wide receiver core in the NFL.
Yeah.
They have a great wide receiver core.
That would probably be the one. I mean, I have them third in their division. I don't feel confident in the Panthers or Saints. I just don't see them making the playoffs. I think the division's too good for that to happen. Uh, and then it would have to be between Washington or the Giants. I wouldn't be blown away if Washington somehow had this like 9 and 8 year that they scraped by in the playoffs.
See,
But
so
yeah,
that would be my
Seattle would
pick.
be the team for me.
My pick would be Washington, and I think it's because things would collapse around them, like the Eagles implode, Sirianni's
Okay.
fired, the Cowboys don't live up to their billing, and they're injured, or whatever. And Washington has a kind of Houston Texans type of year where Jaden is so good, and with the new head coach, where they find a way to win 9-10 games and they win the division, right? And it's just like, what just happened there? That would be like they have complete 100% health through the year type of thing. Like, oh yeah, that is a kind of a doomsday scenario for the Eagles, Cowboys, and Giants that could see happening where Washington benefits or rises through all of that. I don't think Arizona, I'd be really shocked if Arizona's in the playoffs. I'd be really shocked if the Giants are in the playoffs. I'd be stunned if the Panthers are in the playoffs. And I would be truly surprised, like really surprised if the Vikings are in the playoffs. Because if the Vikings are in the playoffs, it means the Packers or the Bears had a really tough year. And I'd just be really surprised by that. Now, again, one quarterback's injury, and I'm not going to name names and knock on all the wood, right? Like, I don't even want to bring it up, but like that happens, and all of a sudden a door can open for a team. I think the Vikings, Saints, Panthers, Seattle, Arizona, Washington, Cowboys, they all need a door to open for them to make the playoffs. They need some real luck beyond just who they are. Even with their ceilings, I think they would still need a door to really open for them. I'm high on the Lions. I think the Lions, they might be my pick to win the whole thing when it's all
I
said
hope
and
so.
done.
I could absolutely see the Lions winning the Super Bowl, and that would be great for the city of Detroit. But
I picked the Lions to win the division last year. I've been right on the Lions for a couple years in a row now. I think I even had them making the playoffs that first year with Dan Campbell when they lost, or that second year with Dan Campbell when they lost they beat the Packers, but they didn't make the playoffs, 2 years ago. So I've been proud of my picks for that. I will say I'm nervous because this is the second year in a row of betting on the Rams, and so we'll see. The Rams did me a solid by making the playoffs last year, and this is the second year in a row for me of shitting on the Cowboys, and so last year they made the playoffs and they won their division, and I picked them to not make the playoffs. So I'm going back to that well, and I think maybe I was just a year too early, and the noise and the contracts are going to catch up to the Cowboys this year.
Yeah. Yep. It's seemingly about time, and with all of the contracts finally coming to a head, it's kind of the perfect situation for this to finally be that time where there needs to be a lot of moving on for, really from the ownership on down, but that's not going to happen. So, I imagine that there's going to be an opening for the Dallas Cowboy head coach vacancy after this year, with a new quarterback on the horizon and potentially needing a new wide receiver one on top of it all. So that'll be very interesting to see. But no, I like that we had some different takes on the NFC landscape, but at the same time, similar vibes in terms of how
the only difference
the
was
playoff,
the Bucks and the Falcons.
Yeah,
only difference is the Bucks and the Falcons. So we're pretty lockstep on it.
Yeah, good stuff. We'll see if the AFC is the same thing. I know the AFC is a tough one to crack and
look at all that.
Tough to really figure out entirely. So I haven't fully put together the entire AFC rundown yet for myself.
The South is tough, man. The South.
Yeah,
I like the Jags this year, but the Texans, and I just don't know what I'm going to get from Anthony Richardson.
We don't know. We don't know what the full season of Richardson and Steichen's going to yield, and we don't know how Levis is going to, perform on a full season as the starter. So there are a lot of question marks in the AFC, especially that division, but should be good. All right. Well, this was a fun, thorough prediction episode for the NFC. Of course, we always appreciate your support here and throughout the podcast network as well. Tons of other shows, especially if you're looking for fantasy football advice. We have For Fantasy's Sake, Educated Ignorance, a lot of good stuff there. Teaming up with some betting partners. So be sure to check out the full lineup of shows. You can head over to For Frequency's Sake or For Fantasy's Sake QC.com for the For Frequency's Sake podcast network. The whole lineup of shows will be there for you to engage with on social media. You can check us out at FB Lounge Pod, as always on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts as well. We appreciate the support, everyone. We'll be back next week with our AFC prediction show.